He did not look at her when he named her price. He spoke to another man as if she were already gone. She stood behind the thin cabin wall, fingers pressed to the rough wood, listening as her life was weighed like meat. 3 pack horses, a crate of salted venison, $2 silver. The words landed slow and heavy, each one carving something out of her chest. Not once did he say her name. Not once did he hesitate. When the deal was done, her father laughed, sharp and bitter, as if a burden had finally been lifted. And she understood. He had sold her. At 19, Eleanor Whitlow had learned how to disappear without moving. Her skin, pale as new snow, had taught her that. Her hair, white as frost, had taught her to lower her eyes. In the small mountain town of Ravens Hollow, she was not a girl. She was a warning. A thing whispered about. A mistake people crossed the road to avoid. To her father, Amos Whitlow, she was worse. She was a reminder of the wife he lost the night Eleanor was born. A reminder he never forgave. He never struck her without reason. Hunger, anger, shame. Sometimes no reason at all. Silence was safer. The morning he sent her away, he shoved a coat into her arms and pointed toward the door. His eyes held no grief, only relief. "A wild man will suit a creature like you," he said. "If the mountains don't finish you, something else will." She did not cry. Crying only made him angrier. She stepped into the sunlight, blinking against the pain, and saw the man who now owned her. A traitor, tall, quiet. His beard streaked with gray. He did not smile. He did not leer. He simply nodded once, as if confirming a delivery. The wagon rolled out before she could look back. For 3 days they traveled north into the high country. The trader, Silas Boone, spoke little. He gave her water, shared dried meat, kept his distance. Not kind, not cruel, just finished with the business of her sale. Eleanor rode with her head down, fear sitting in her stomach like a stone. Her father's words followed her with every mile. Wild man, savage, monster. On the 3rd night, the stars burned brighter than she had ever seen. They camped beside a rock outcrop shaped like a sleeping animal. The fire cracked low. Silas handed her a tin cup and finally spoke. "You're bound for Pine Watch Valley," he said, "to a man named Rowan Hale." The name meant nothing, and yet it frightened her. "He knows what you look like," Silas added, staring into the fire. "He asked for you, by description." Her breath caught. "He knows," she whispered. Silas nodded. "Where you come from, they call it a curse. Up there they believe rare things are gifts. Snow isn't ugly to mountain folk. It's sacred." The words struck harder than cruelty ever had. She did not understand them. Could not. She stayed awake long after the fire died, staring at the dark, afraid to hope. The next day, the trail climbed. Air thinned. Pines closed in. And then, without warning, the world opened. Below them lay a hidden valley. Green. Alive. A single cabin rested near a winding stream, smoke lifting gently into the sky. It did not look like a prison. It looked like peace. Eleanor's heart beat faster, not with fear, but confusion. Silas stopped the wagon. "That's it," he said. A man stepped out from the cabin. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his hair dark against skin weathered by sun and wind. He walked slowly, not like someone rushing to claim property, but like someone approaching something fragile. His eyes found her immediately. Eleanor braced herself. She waited for disgust, for revulsion, for the look she had known all her life. It never came. He stopped several steps away and looked at her as if she were something holy. Not pity, not hunger, wonder. "Snowlight," he said softly. The words settled over her like a blanket. She did not know it yet, but with that single breath, he gave her a new name. One not shaped by hatred. Silas spoke with him briefly. Then the trader left, the sound of the wagon fading down the trail, taking her past life with it. Eleanor stood frozen. certain the kindness was a trick. Kindness always was. Rowan Hale turned toward a small cabin beneath the trees. "This is yours," he said. "No one enters without your say." That was all. He walked away. Inside, the cabin smelled of pine and clean wool. A bed waited. Water. Fresh flowers in a clay jar. Eleanor sank onto the furs, shaking. Alone. Truly alone. And, for the first time, safe enough to breathe. Days passed. Rowan never crossed her threshold. Each morning, wildflowers appeared at her door. No words. No demands. Just quiet offerings. Then a woman from down the valley came with stew. A child smiled at her without fear. Eleanor felt something shift, slow and terrifying. Hope. On the 6th evening, as the sun bled gold through the trees, Eleanor realized the truth that frightened her more than cruelty ever had. What if this man was not her end? What if he was her beginning? Eleanor learned the valley by watching it breathe. Mornings arrived softly, light slipping through the trees and touching the cabin walls before it ever reached her skin. She rose with the sun, careful and quiet, as if noise might break the fragile peace she had been given. From her window, she watched Rowan Hale move through his days with a steady rhythm. He chopped wood with slow strength. He spoke to his horses like old friends. He worked the soil as if listening to it. He never rushed her. For 4 days, he did not approach. Not once. And that, more than anything, unsettled her. In Raven's Hollow, attention meant danger. Here, distance felt like respect. Still, she remained half-hidden, her body remembering fear even when her mind wanted to forget it. On the 5th morning, she opened her door to find a small bundle of purple flowers resting on the step. Their petals were delicate, fragile, stubborn. They grew where the ground was rocky and thin. Eleanor knelt and touched them with trembling fingers. Someone had noticed what she noticed. Someone had seen her linger near the stream, studying the plants as if they were old friends. She pressed the flowers between the pages of a worn book she had carried since childhood. It was the only thing her father had never taken. He had not believed it valuable enough. That afternoon, a woman approached the cabin. She stopped several steps away, careful not to crowd. Her hair was pulled back, streaked with gray, her eyes warm and steady. She held a wooden bowl filled with steaming stew. "I'm Mara," she said gently. "I live downriver." Eleanor hesitated, then stepped forward. Their fingers brushed as she accepted the bowl. The touch did not hurt. That alone nearly undid her. Mara smiled. "Rowan said you like quiet." Eleanor nodded. "I do too," Mara replied, and she left without another word. Each day after that, Mara returned, sometimes with food, sometimes with nothing at all. She would sit nearby, mending cloth or shelling beans, speaking only when spoken to. There was no pressure, no prying, and slowly, Eleanor's shoulders began to lower. Her breath came easier. One afternoon, Mara arrived with her nephew, a small boy named Lucas. He coughed hard, the sound tearing through his thin chest. Eleanor froze. Illness had always meant blame where she came from. She watched, helpless, as the boy struggled. Then memory stirred. Her mother's hands. Leaves crushed between stones. Warm salve pressed gently to aching lungs. Eleanor's heart pounded as she studied the plants near the stream. Mullein. Broad leaves. Soft as felt. The knowledge rose uninvited, frightening and clear. She gathered the leaves at dusk, working with shaking hands. When she brought the salve to Mara, she could not find her voice. She only showed her. Chest. Breath. Slow. Mara studied her face, not with suspicion, with trust. She used the salve that night. Eleanor did not sleep. Fear wrapped around her ribs, tight and cruel. If the boy worsened, she knew the blame would return. She braced for it. But morning came. Mara arrived with Lucas, his cough gone, his smile wide and gap-toothed. Mara took Eleanor's hands and squeezed them, eyes shining. No words were needed. Something passed between them. Something solid. The valley noticed. People did not crowd her. They watched. They waited. A man brought a root for her to smell. A woman asked about a tea. Eleanor answered softly, carefully, her confidence growing one breath at a time. She planted a small garden behind her cabin, kneeling in the dirt, her pale hands dark with soil. The earth did not reject her, neither did the people. Rowan observed from a distance, always patient, always respectful. When he spoke to her, it was never to command, only to ask, "Will this grow here? What does the frost do to it?" Quote, their conversations were brief, careful, like stepping stones across deep water. One evening, as the light faded and the valley settled into quiet, Rowan approached her cabin alone. Eleanor's heart jumped, sharp and sudden. He stopped where the lantern light touched his boots and no farther. "Will you walk with me?" he asked. Not a command, a choice. She nodded. They followed the stream to a small pool tucked beneath the trees. The water reflected the sky, dark and endless. They stood side by side, close enough to feel warmth, far enough to breathe. "Your garden has changed this place," Rowan said. "You bring life where it was thin." Eleanor swallowed. "I just help things live." Rowan turned to her, his face softened by moonlight. "My wife did that," he said quietly. "She made the valley feel full." The words hung between them. Eleanor felt the ache beneath his calm. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "So am I," he replied. "But sorrow does not mean emptiness forever." He reached out, stopping just short of touching her hand, waiting. Eleanor closed the space herself. The contact was gentle, grounding, real. For the first time, she did not pull away. When they returned to the cabin, Rowan did not follow her inside. He only looked at her, his eyes steady and kind. "Rest," he said. As Eleanor closed the door, her heart raced with something new. Not fear, not shame, anticipation. But far beyond the valley, on a trail she thought she had escaped forever, a man with a familiar voice was asking questions. And his answers pointed straight toward the life she was only beginning to claim. The change did not arrive all at once. It crept in quietly, the way healing always did. Eleanor began waking before dawn, not from fear, but from purpose. She learned the moods of the valley, the way frost lingered in shadow, and sunlight warmed the soil first near the stream. Her garden expanded, neat rows of green pushing through dark earth. Each new sprout felt like proof. She could nurture life. She could belong. Rowan never hovered, but he was always near. When she struggled with the weight of water buckets, he appeared without comment and took one from her hands. When storms rolled down from the peaks, he made sure her windows were sealed, her firewood stacked. His care was steady, unspoken. And because it asked nothing in return, it terrified her. One afternoon, a sudden clap of thunder sent her heart racing. Instinct took over. She froze, breath shallow, waiting for anger that never came. Rowan found her moments later, crouched by the garden fence, shaking. "It's only noise," he said gently. She nodded, ashamed of her fear. He did not touch her. He did not press. He simply stayed until her breathing slowed. That night, Eleanor realized something dangerous. She trusted him. The realization followed her into sleep and stirred old ghosts. She dreamed of her father's cabin, the low ceiling, the smell of damp wood, his voice cutting through silence like a blade. She woke with a gasp, sweat chilling her skin. At dawn, she found a carved wooden bird resting on her doorstep. Smooth, simple. Rowan's work. Its wings were spread, not trapped. Eleanor held it to her chest and cried for the first time since leaving Raven's Hollow. Weeks passed. Autumn crept into the valley, painting leaves gold and red. The community drew closer as winter preparations began. Eleanor learned to preserve meat, to store roots, to mend wool. She was no longer watched with caution, but with quiet acceptance. Children followed her now, asked questions, laughed when she laughed. One evening, Rowan invited her to his cabin. The invitation alone made her pulse race. She stepped inside slowly, noting every detail. The worn table, the neatly stacked books, a woman's shawl folded carefully on a shelf, evidence of a life lived and lost. Rowan poured tea. "You don't have to stay." "I want to," she replied. They spoke of small things: weather, soil, stories from books. Then silence settled, heavy but not uncomfortable. "My wife's name was Eliza," Rowan said at last. "She died giving birth. The child did not live." Eleanor's chest tightened. "I'm sorry. For a long time I believed the valley was finished with me," he continued, "that I was meant to endure, not hope." He met her gaze. "Then you came." Eleanor looked down at her hands, pale, scarred, steady. "I was sold," she said quietly. "I didn't choose this place." Rowan nodded. "But you choose what you build here." The truth of it sank deep. That night, as Eleanor returned to her cabin, a sense of unease followed her. Not fear of Rowan. Fear of the world beyond the valley. Of the past she had not truly escaped. That fear found form sooner than she expected. It arrived with a rider. He came late one afternoon, his horse lathered, his face drawn tight. He spoke urgently with Rowan near the stream. Eleanor watched from her doorway, dread blooming fast and cold. Rowan approached her moments later, his expression calm but grave. "There are men asking about you in the lower towns," he said. "One of them matches your father's description." Quote, the word struck her like a blow. "Father." The past surged back, sharp and choking. "What does he want?" she whispered. "Authority," Rowan replied. "Control. He claims you were taken." Eleanor's hands trembled. The old urge rose, strong and familiar. Hide, run, disappear. Rowan took her hands, firm and grounding. "He has no claim here," he said, "but you must decide how to face him." That night, Eleanor did not sleep. She sat by the fire, staring into the flames, memories pressing in. Every insult, every blow. Every night she believed herself cursed. At dawn, she made her choice. She would not run. When the soldiers arrived 2 days later, the valley was ready. Not for violence, for truth. They rode in slow and deliberate, bluecoats bright against the earth. At their head rode a man Eleanor knew too well, Amos Whitlow. Her father. His eyes found her instantly, his mouth curling in triumph. "She's been stolen," he declared, "taken against her will." Eleanor stepped forward before Rowan could speak. "I was sold," she said clearly, "by you." The soldiers murmured. Amos sneered. "Lies." Eleanor met his gaze, steady and unafraid. "You took 3 horses, a crate of meat and silver," she continued. "You sold your daughter. You lost all claim that day." Silence followed, heavy, unforgiving. Rowan stood beside her. The valley stood behind her. The officer listened, watched, and finally shook his head. "This woman stands of her own will," he said. "We will not intervene." Amos shouted, threatened, but power drained from him as quickly as it had once flowed. As the soldiers turned away, Eleanor felt the final chain break. Her father's voice faded into the trees. That night the valley breathed again. Rowan held her as she shook, not from fear, but release. "You stood," he said softly. "So did you," she replied. In the quiet that followed, Eleanor understood the truth fully at last. She was no longer running from her past. She had faced it. And she had won. But something new was growing within her now, something fragile, something powerful. And it would soon ask everything of her. The air itself seemed steadier, as if the mountains had witnessed the truth and chosen a side. Eleanor noticed it in the way people moved closer, in the way children laughed without glancing over their shoulders, in the way her own breath finally reached the bottom of her lungs. That night, she did not dream of her father. She slept deeply, wrapped in furs, the carved wooden bird resting beside her pillow. When morning came, light spilled across the floor, gentle and sure. For the first time in her life, there was no dread waiting for her at the edge of waking. Rowan met her outside with 2 cups of tea. "You don't have to be brave anymore," he said quietly. Eleanor took the cup. Warmth seeped into her hands. "I don't know how to stop," she admitted. He gave a small, understanding smile. "You'll learn." Days turned into weeks. Autumn settled fully into the valley. Crisp mornings and long, amber evenings. Eleanor's garden thrived, stubborn green against the cooling air. She spent hours there, grounding herself in soil and roots, letting the earth teach her patience. Rowan began working beside her more often. Not directing, learning. She showed him which leaves eased pain, which roots warmed the blood. He listened as if every word mattered, and to him, it did. One evening, as the sun sank low, Rowan handed her something wrapped in cloth. "I made this," he said. Inside was a necklace. Smooth river stones and carved pine beads, warm from his hands. Simple, honest. It carried the weight of intention, not ownership. Eleanor's breath caught. "It's beautiful." "So are you," he replied, without hesitation, without fear. The words did not sting, they settled. She reached out and touched his arm, her choice clear in the movement. They did not rush. Their closeness grew like her garden, root by root, trust by trust. When Rowan asked her to share his cabin, he did not kneel, he did not plead. He stood before her, steady as stone. "I would like to build a life with you," he said, "only if you wish the same." Eleanor felt no chains in the words, only invitation. "I choose you," she said. Their wedding came quietly, no grand crowd, just the valley. The people who had seen her grow from a frightened shadow into something solid and sure. She wore a simple dress, her pale hair woven with wildflowers from her own garden. Rowan stood waiting, eyes bright, hands open. Their vows were not about possession. They were about shelter, partnership, standing side by side when storms came. When the quilt was wrapped around them, binding them together, Eleanor felt the truth settle deep in her bones. She was not owned. She was chosen. Marriage did not change the rhythm of their lives. It deepened it. Work shared. Silence shared. Laughter slow and real. Eleanor learned to ride. Rowan learned to let joy surprise him. At night, they spoke of hopes neither had dared voice before. Winter came, white and quiet. Snow blanketed the valley, turning it into a world of light. Eleanor no longer hid from the sun's glare. She wore it. She learned how to protect herself without shame. One morning, while kneeling by the fire, she felt it. A shift, a whisper of something new. The days that followed brought certainty. Her body, once a source of blame and pain, now carried possibility. Eleanor stood in the garden, snow melting into mud beneath her boots, and knew. She was with child. Fear flickered first. Old fear, inherited fear. Then it faded beneath something stronger. Hope. That evening, she led Rowan to the stream, to the place where they had first walked together. She took his hand and placed it gently over her belly. He stilled, eyes widening as understanding bloomed. Joy spread across his face, slow and radiant. He knelt before her, pressing his forehead against her hands. "You brought life back to this valley," he whispered. "Now you carry its future." The news spread softly, like warmth from a hearth. The valley received it as a blessing. Eleanor felt herself woven fully into its heart. Yet even as happiness grew, she sensed the weight of what was coming. New life meant new fear. New hope meant new risk. And Eleanor knew the world beyond the valley never stopped moving. Somewhere far below, winter roads would thaw. And with them, old resentments might rise again. Winter loosened its grip slowly, as if reluctant to release the valley. Snow retreated from the lower banks of the stream, revealing dark earth and the first brave shoots of green. Eleanor moved carefully now, her body asking for gentleness in ways it never had before. Rowan noticed everything. The way she tired earlier. The way she paused to breathe. He never questioned. He simply adjusted, stepping closer when she needed support, stepping back when she needed space. Their home filled with quiet anticipation. Mara visited often, bringing broth and steady reassurance. The children watched Eleanor's belly with open curiosity, as if witnessing a miracle unfolding in real time. Eleanor felt fear sometimes, late at night, when the fire burned low and old memories stirred. But the fear no longer ruled her. It came, and it passed. One evening, as rain tapped softly against the roof, Rowan spoke words that had been sitting heavy on his chest. "I worry," he admitted. "Not about us. About what we cannot control." Eleanor understood. "The world beyond the valley," she said. He nodded. "Men like your father do not let go easily." She placed her hand over his. "Neither do women who have learned how to stand." The truth of it steadied them both. Spring arrived in full, brilliant force. The valley burst into color. Eleanor's garden bloomed wildly, more vibrant than ever before. She worked slowly, guided by instinct, planting with care. Life answered her attention again and again. One afternoon, while she rested beneath a tree, a familiar unease settled over her. Not fear, awareness. The birds had gone quiet. The air held its breath. Rowan appeared moments later, his jaw tight. "There's a rider," he said, "coming fast." The rider arrived with urgency etched into his face. He spoke low and quick. Eleanor did not need to hear the words to know their meaning. Men were coming again. Not soldiers this time. Civilians. Armed. Angry. Her father had not stopped searching. He had gathered others who shared his bitterness. Men eager to believe a story that painted them as heroes reclaiming stolen property. The valley did not panic. It prepared. Children were guided to safety. Fires were banked. The men gathered not with rage but resolve. Eleanor stood among them, one hand resting on her belly, the other in Rowan's grip. "I won't hide," she said. Rowan searched her face. "You don't have to face this." "I do," she replied, "for myself. For our child." The men arrived at dusk, their figures dark against the glowing horizon. They shouted accusations, threats, promises of force. Eleanor stepped forward before Rowan could move. Her voice carried, calm and unyielding. "I am here by choice," she said. "I was sold, not stolen. And I will not be taken again." Her father stood among them, his face twisted with rage. "You owe me," he shouted. "You were born a curse." Eleanor met his gaze without flinching. "I was born a child," she said. "You chose cruelty." The valley closed ranks behind her. Mara stepped forward. Others followed. Testimonies rose, not dramatic, but undeniable. Kindness given, help shared, lives touched. The men hesitated. Doubt spread. Rowan lifted his rifle, not aiming, only holding it. "This valley stands together," he said. "Leave now or answer to all of us." Silence stretched. Then one by one the men turned away. Fear of unity outweighed hunger for power. Eleanor's father remained, staring at her as if seeing her clearly for the first time. He saw not a ghost, not a curse. He saw a woman who would not bend. He left without a word. The valley exhaled. That night, Eleanor wept in Rowan's arms, the tears cleansing, not breaking. "I thought it would never end," she whispered. "It has," Rowan said. "You ended it." Summer followed, rich and full. Eleanor's strength returned in waves. She learned the rhythm of carrying life, the balance between caution and trust. Rowan spoke to her belly in quiet moments, his voice soft with wonder. When the time came, it came quickly. Pain arrived like a storm, fierce and focused. The women gathered. Mara took Eleanor's hands. Rowan stayed close, his presence a steady anchor. Hours passed. Breath by breath. Eleanor reached deep, beyond fear, beyond memory. She pushed not as a frightened girl, but as a woman who had survived. The child arrived with a cry that split the air. A daughter, pale as dawn, strong lunged, alive. Eleanor held her close, tears streaming freely. "She's beautiful," she whispered. Rowan knelt beside them, awe etched into every line of his face. "She's ours," he said, "and she is free." The valley celebrated quietly, reverently. A new life had joined them, not as a burden, but as a promise. As Eleanor rocked her daughter beneath the stars that night, she felt the final weight lift from her soul. Her story would not repeat itself, and the future, once terrifying and uncertain, now stretched before her like open land beneath a rising sun. The valley welcomed the child as if it had been waiting for her all along. In the days that followed her birth, Eleanor moved slowly, her body tender, her heart fuller than it had ever known. She watched her daughter sleep, pale lashes resting against skin like moonlight on snow, and felt a fierce, unfamiliar certainty rise within her. This life would be different. This child would never learn fear as a language. Rowan rarely left their side. He carried the baby with reverence, as though holding something sacred. He learned her cries, her rhythms, the way she calmed when he hummed low songs from his childhood. Eleanor watched him and felt a quiet awe. The mountain man who once lived alone now moved through the cabin with purpose shaped by love. Mara visited daily, bringing food, stories, and gentle guidance. The women of the valley came too, each one offering something small and meaningful. A blanket, a carved toy, a whispered blessing. Eleanor felt wrapped in more than cloth. She was held by community. As summer deepened, Eleanor returned to her garden, her daughter nestled against her chest. She worked carefully, showing the baby leaves and flowers, teaching her the names of things that healed. The earth answered as it always had, generous and patient. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Rowan joined her by the stream. "She has your eyes," he said softly. Eleanor smiled. "I hope she sees kindness first." "She will," he replied. "We will make sure of it." The peace felt real, earned. And yet Eleanor knew life did not promise stillness forever. It promised seasons, change, trials. The test came quietly. A letter arrived, carried by a trader passing through. News from Raven's Hollow. Eleanor's father had died. Illness, alone, bitter to the end. The words sat heavy in her hands. Rowan watched her carefully. "You don't have to feel anything." Eleanor thought about the girl she had been, the nights of fear, the years of silence. Then she looked at her daughter, warm and safe. "I feel free," she said. They burned the letter that night. Let the ashes scatter into the wind. The past no longer needed a place in her home. Years passed gently. Eleanor's daughter grew strong, curious, unafraid of the sun. She ran through the valley with laughter that echoed against the mountains. People no longer spoke of the pale woman sold into the high country. They spoke of Eleanor Hale, healer, gardener, mother. Sometimes travelers asked about her skin, her hair. Eleanor answered calmly, without shame. Difference was no longer a wound. It was simply truth. On a quiet evening, as autumn painted the valley once more, Eleanor stood with Rowan on the ridge overlooking their home. Smoke rose from the chimney. Their daughter's laughter drifted up from below. "Do you ever wonder," Rowan asked, "what might have happened if you had never come here?" Eleanor considered it, then shook her head. "No," she said, "because this is where I chose to stay." She took his hand, steady and warm. The mountains stretched endlessly before them, vast and unafraid. Once, she had been sold as a burden. Once, she had believed herself a curse. Now, she knew the truth. She had always been a seed, and the right ground had allowed her to bloom. If you felt this tale in your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Archives of the Wild West, where every story rides through the dust, the danger, and the kind of love that never dies. See you in the next tale, partner.